Hello and welcome to the WIHS Journal, Public Affairs from 104.9 FM. I'm Paul Kretschmer. We're going to talk about the rising sea levels around the world using Venice initially as an illustration, and then talk further about what may happen in areas where there is low land mass and people on it where flooding can readily occur. Here's my guest for today's broadcast on the WIHS Journal.
My name is Aris Papadopoulos. I am the founding chair of the nonprofit Resilience Action Fund. I'm a veteran of the construction industry and also a 9/11 World Trade Center survivor.
How long has the Resilience Project been in existence? What prompted it to begin with then, sir?
Well, it's been something that's gradually grown with me, having been in construction and particularly after 9/11, starting to look at the world in a different way and asking why are our homes, our communities, our buildings vulnerable to hazards. So upon retiring 5 years ago, I started the nonprofit. I wrote the book, Resilience, The Ultimate Sustainability, and that book became the basis for a documentary that PBS has been showing since last fall called Built to Last with a question mark.
Yeah, one of the lead points on grabbing my attention on what you do in particular was the concept of what's been going on in Venice and what that should maybe teach the rest of us. It seems just in the last couple of months, things are even ever more serious than they've ever been. Now, that's not to say that things weren't getting much more perilous in Venice as a result of the way the city's constructed and the way the water all around it and within it respond. Give me an idea of what your observations are based upon your construction experience as to what's been going on in that city.
Well, I think the problem of flooding in Venice has been long recognized. In 1966, there was 5 feet of flooding, and it took a while for the local and national government to do something about it. They initiated a project in 2003 to essentially enclose the 3 entrances to the lagoon in which Venice is located. But these projects are multi-decade projects. Their funding kind of swayed with the political will of the parties in power. And there was huge overrun. The project itself went from $1 billion to $8 billion and is a decade late and still not completed. So these projects are enormous undertaking to protect an entire city, and the outcome is difficult to predict, very expensive, and really can only be justified to protect only the most valuable locations, and Venice is definitely a international location of a city of high value, historic Venice. But it's going to be very hard, I believe, to justify it, such undertakings for every city that will be threatened and town that will be threatened by floods.
One of the things that I was just commenting on a few minutes ago in a side conversation with a colleague of mine regarding the upcoming conversation we are not having is things that happen like Storm Sandy in the New York City area and how much damage it caused in the city of New York, and how the Metropolitan Transportation Authority is still recovering in many ways from the damage that was wrought by that, and the fact that people sometimes have short memory spans, and something that looks critical at the time it happens sometimes tends to lose the attention of people who ought to know better and have the need to deal with something on a longer term basis in order for something to happen that's more positive.
You're exactly right on that. Memories are short. Other priorities take the front line. And if you go a couple of decades after that without any major event, then people start wondering, well, why are we even spending the money? And money gets diverted elsewhere until, again, another major event strikes the same location, let's say. So unfortunately, history tends to repeat itself until something severe, happens. But there is a growing trend line and you're probably driven, as scientists say, by the change in global temperatures that is going to threaten a lot of locations that are essentially at elevations, let's say, below 10 feet from sea level or water levels.
Have you already seen or worked on projections yourself about how much of the coastline of America, for instance, would be impacted if in fact the water does rise that much? How much of our shoreline would we lose?
Well, there are many projections that have been issued. I don't issue any myself, but it tends to show that about a third of our nation lives, let's say, within 5 to 10 miles of our coast, a third of our population. And a lot of that population is exposed to elevations that are below, let's say, 10 to 15 feet. I consider 15 feet to kind of be a minimum safety level. So, it's possible that 30 to 40% of those populations are in that kind of high risk area. And definitely they will be exposed to that. They will have much higher losses than other locations. Hopefully it's not human losses, but definitely economic losses. Those properties will be more expensive to maintain and to preserve. Those it's very likely in that kind of situation that the value of those properties risks going down. In other words, they might lose value, they might lose the savings they have in those properties, or they may not appreciate as much in the future.
Yeah. Is there a difference between trying to mitigate a situation like flooding, for instance, between a smaller community and a larger one? The reason why I ask is because in the last few days I saw an article in the Wall Street Journal about a town in Missouri, I think it was, that is basically disappearing because it was built along the shoreline of the Mississippi River so closely that every time something major happens, which has been a number of times in the last 20 or 30 years, the town goes underwater mostly, and the emergency people come in and help them rebuild it, or they've been doing that up till now at least. And now that town's basically being vacated, and the people are moving away and leaving a place that has a lot of attachment for them, but the attachment has become increasingly expensive for them to maintain. And another example I can think of is up in the state of Wisconsin, where there's a small town called Soldiers Grove, which basically, I think about 30 years ago, went to the federal government and said, look, we could ask you for money to rebuild our community again where it's at, but we think it would make more sense if you would assist us in moving the town back from the river that flows next to us, so that we don't have to go through this again, and we don't have to keep on coming back and asking you to essentially spend the same money over and over again, only to have it happen again repeatedly.
Yeah, that's a very true realization. And although it's difficult for people to pick up and move, I think the repetition of these events is causing some people to say, it's not worth the stress and the loss of not just, the home, but, your valuable possessions, your lifetime memories that you collect, and the stress all that creates. Our ancestors in some ways were wiser than us. The original towns, both in Europe and here in the U.S., were generally located on what I call the high ground. And I think we became, in our generation, more confident about our ability to master the forces of nature and build where it's riskier, on the floodplains, on the coast, filling in lowland locations.
Aris Papadopoulos is my guest on today and tomorrow's WIHS Journal. For further information, call us at 860-346-1049. Also, visit our YouTube channel at WIHS 1049. The opinions expressed are those of the participants, not necessarily those of the staff or management of the station. I'm Paul Kretschmer on the WIHS Journal, Public Affairs from WIHS, Middletown.